Hello fellow stewards and welcome back to another Frostpunk 2 guide. Today we're going to be talking all things laws. This video is going to explain laws in details. I'll also show you how I can predict the outcome of any vote with about 90% accuracy. Also, I'll show you how I can daisy chain laws together to boost trust with all of my factions and communities. You don't get access to laws until chapter 1 in the story. Once there, to access laws, you need to build a council hall, which can be found in the buildings menu. So if you press N or use the button over here, you can build yourself a council hall. I recommend this is the first building that you construct in story or utopia. In the story, after constructing the council hall, it'll force you to pass the first law, which determines whether you should continue as steward. We're going to use this to go over the law interface. The council is made of 100 people, which proportionally represent the various factions in your city. The top row over here shows all the factions in your city, and you can click them to see some important information about them. You can see what laws they're trying to pass, and more importantly, you can see what percentage of the city that community or faction is. Here you can see the New Londoners are 45% of the city, the Frostlanders are 43% of the city, and the Faithkeepers are 12% of the city. That's important because the proportions here represent the proportions of who sits on the council. As an example, if we look at the New Londoners, 45% of the city are New Londoners. That means 45 out of 100 people in the council are New Londoners. There are 12 Faithkeepers in this council, and there are 43 Frostlanders. And that's going to influence the direction of the votes because they all want different things. Below that is the text of what current law is trying to be passed. At the moment, we're trying to pass the vote of confidence, whether we should still remain in power. Below that is the voting bar. Arguably the most important UI element on this screen. It's going to show you how the vote's going to go. It shows how many people are for, how many people are against, and how many people are hesitant. You can hover over it to get more information. To pass the vote, you will need 51 votes, which is the council majority out of 100. I've got a pretty simple technique on how to figure out how a vote might turn out. It's not 100% accurate, but most of the time I can tell the outcome of a vote. You basically take the number of people that are for and half the number of hesitant people, and that should roughly give you an idea of how many people are going to vote for. In this example, half the hesitant of 56 is 28, plus the 20 votes for should land you around the 48 mark. So in my estimate, this vote will probably fail. If it's an important vote, we're going to have to do something to manipulate these numbers, but let's just hit the vote button to see if I'm right. There you go. See, 49, right? Pretty close to my estimate. Interestingly enough to note, if you fail this vote, I think the game just ends. So, how can we influence these numbers such that we get the 51 votes that we need to pass a vote? So let's negotiate and see what happens. In the negotiate menu, it'll show you which factions you can negotiate with. In this vote, I can negotiate with all 3 factions, but that's not always going to be the case. If you have an active promise with a faction, or if the law is against their worldview, they won't negotiate with you. The negotiate menu shows how many delegates there are for each faction, as well as what the delegates are going to vote for. For example, in this vote, there are 45 New Londoners, and they're mostly hesitant. There's 12 Stalwarts, and they're mostly for, and Frostlanders, there's 43, and they're mostly hesitant. So when you pick who you want to negotiate with, you want to pick the faction that is mostly hesitant or mostly against, that has the most delegates. Let's negotiate with the New Londoners and see what they want. The next screen is split vertically into 2 sections. So on the left over here, it says my terms, and on the right, it's their terms. So I can influence them to vote for or against any particular law. In this case, I want them to vote for this law. Now we can see what they want. You'll always be able to select one of 3 options. Whichever you pick will basically turn into a promise with that faction, which means you don't necessarily need to fulfill that promise after the vote, but a broken promise will result in trust loss and negative standing with that faction. The promise can come in the form of a future research, a future law, or a community action such as funding their projects. I recommend picking a promise that aligns with your own goals anyway to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. For example, if I'm in the early game, I probably don't want to fund their projects because heat stamps are super useful to me, so I wouldn't pick this term. Instead, I would probably pick this one, where I would want to enact mass-produced goods anyway, so I might as well promise you guys that I'm going to do that. And once you tick the thing for their terms, you can see the vote distribution instantly changes, and now the law is supported. We have 57 people voting for, 40 hesitant, and 3 against. By my maths, that should give you a total of 77 people voting for. Let's accept these terms and get back to the voting screen and hit the vote button and see what happens. 75. That's pretty close to our prediction. So if you use my technique for predictive voting, taking half the hesitant plus the 4, just know the numbers can swing 1 or 2 either way. So if it's very close to 51, then don't chance it. Just do something to really get that 4 number up, or against number up if you're trying to get the law shot down. After passing a law, if you look at the bottom left of your screen, the council button, you can see that the council is now in recess for 10 weeks. That means you can only pass a law once every 10 weeks. The only exception to that is if you go into your central district, you'll have a district ability that says emergency council session. You can gather all the delegates and bring them to the council for an emergency session. If you click that, it will worsen the relationships with all your communities, but it will allow you to immediately pass another law. Now that you're a Frostpunk political expert and have a full understanding of how to bend the council to your will, let's go over what laws you can pass and how they can help your city. So when you propose a law, it's split into 4 sections: survival, city, society, and rule. You can go into any one of them, and those 4 sections are up the top of the next screen. Each major category is then split into 3 subsections. So under survival, you have laws that deal with resources, frostland, and efficiency. Under city, you have laws that deal with welfare, citizenship, and labor. Under society, you have laws that deal with ethics, family, and crime. And the only thing that's a little bit different is under the rule laws. So essentially, they will give you a special ability over your citizens. We'll cover them in a lot more detail later in the video. But for now, the only thing that you need to know is that they work a little bit differently to normal laws because you need a 2/3 majority to pass, or 67 votes. Going back to some of our normal laws, you can see there are laws that you get at the start of the game, and there are others that are grayed out. If you hover over a grayed out one, it says it's a nebulous, unformed idea. Events or research can give it order. For example, this scout training is currently grayed out. Let's go into the research tree to see what research needs to be done to unlock that idea. So over here in the Frostland section, we can see there's a scout training idea. If you click this, you can see the variations of the scout training idea that aligns with the different factions. If you research the idea, we can see as the research starts to complete itself, a new law is available. The new law will automatically get proposed after a research gets available in the next council session, so you'll be able to immediately vote on it. As far as I'm aware, you can't change this vote. So be aware that whenever you research an idea, the next council session will vote on that idea. And you can't change the proposal. If you go here and I want to change it, it doesn't let you. My maths tells me that this 43 plus 8 should be right on the 51 mark, so this law has like a 50-50% chance of going through, depending on how the hesitant delegates vote. And there we go, you can see it swung 2 votes in the other direction. Alright, the council's in recess so we can explore the laws. You can see now that we've researched the idea and we've picked the law, the Pathfinder Scouts law is now in effect. I'm not going to go through every single law as there's just way too many, but let's just go over one example in more detail. Each topic under these categories will have various options. For example, under goods, you can see there's 2 options, durable goods or mass-produced goods. If you click into the topic, it will tell you the current law under that section. So for goods, right now, there's no law, and it will allow you to propose one of the options. So you can either propose durable goods or mass-produced goods. When you hover over the law itself, it'll tell you who it's supported by. So Frostlanders in this example support durable goods, and the mass-produced goods are supported by the New Londoners community and their faction of stalwarts. On the right, you can also see roughly how the people are going to vote for that particular law to give you a rough idea. But obviously, you can influence this vote as I showed before after you propose it. On each law, you can see how that law will impact your city. For example, durable goods. Goods demand per capita is slightly decreased. Mass-produced goods goods production efficiency is increased. So you can pick and choose at your own discretion what you prefer, and you can pick your laws based on your city's needs at the time or based on your city's future needs. Once you've made your decision, you simply select it and click propose, and it'll bring you back to this screen, which we covered before. You can influence the votes using negotiate, or you can just hit vote if you're confident you have your 51 delegates that will get that law through. One final thing that's worth noting is the number of people that are going to vote for you also heavily depends on your trust, as well as your standing with each faction and community. For example, you can see right now, if I were to propose a law such as guard enforcers, you can see there are 28 people that are voting for me and 54 hesitant. Now, if I were to improve my standing with these people, for example, if I were to promote these guys and then give them some money and give these guys some money, you can see if I go back to my vote now and propose the same law, I suddenly already have all the votes that I need because all my people are for me. And we can see that we get 86 for votes now that I am heavily revered with all of my factions. Now let's quickly go over the rule laws section because they function a little bit differently to the normal laws. As we said before, that they need 2/3 majority to pass, which means they need 67 votes to pass. They are quite powerful, so you should ensure that you use some of these rule laws whenever you can. Let's go over what a couple of them do. So, guided voting. The steward may declare a motion vitally important to the city's survival, curtailing debate, convincing many wavering delegates to support it. Once you've unlocked guided voting, this section in your law panel will unlock, and it has guided voting. So you can click it and you can see it will use up your trust and it will influence the votes. You can see how much it influences the votes. We got 46 for, and when guided voting is on, we get 64 for. You can get them to vote for or against any law. The second rule law, Bureau of Propaganda, basically this is just a passive buff that will decrease tensions, and deaths, guided voting, emergency council sessions will all decrease the relationships less. Next, we have the secret police. Basically, they give you a community action that you can do to influence various things. Let's take a look. If you go to any one of your factions, you will be able to find in the council section, assign secret police. When you click assign secret police, it'll give you some options and you can pick what you want them to do. You can improve your standing with the faction, you can decrease the size of the faction, or you can revoke their council seats so the delegates won't vote in the next session. For example, if I'm trying to pass this law over here and there is 39 people against, we can see all the stalwarts delegates disagree. So we can go over to our stalwarts delegates, and in the council tab, we can assign the secret police. Now we can revoke their council seats for this next vote. It will probably reduce their standing, but that's fine, because if we now go and propose that same law, we can see now that the stalwarts have been revoked. Their numbers have disappeared in the against section. The 25 stalwarts that were against us are now gone, and there are just only Frostlanders and New Londoners and Pilgrims voting. On the left, we have a few more rule laws, such as guard enforcers. They give you a few district abilities, such as quell protest and mobilize watchtower squads. Quell protest basically allows you to end protests, and protests happen when a faction is really against you and they have negative effects, so that's super useful. And mobilize watchtower squads will give you the ability to get more guard squads. If you go over to any district where you have one of the watchtowers built, you'll see you'll now have this ability called Mobilize Watchtower Guards, which will increase the guard squad output by 8, and it will stop reducing crime and trust will fall slightly. You can click it, and you can see I have now more guard squads to use. The next ability is Steward's Militia, which will unlock a community action to provide even more guard squads, and guard squads become more effective at fighting crime. If you go to your factions, you will see that under special, you'll have an ability to enlist to Steward's Militia, which will increase the guard squad output again. Finally, we have the Martial Law ability, and it unlocks the Martial Law City ability, which lowers the number of guard squads required for peacekeeping abilities. Over here in the Central District, you will see you have the ability to declare martial law, and it will reduce the guard squad cost of all abilities by 30% and reduce production efficiency a little bit. It's also worth noting that when your tensions are really high, it makes these rule laws a lot easier to pass. As it says, in times of high tension, they will be more inclined to support you. If I was trying to pass Guard Enforcer now, you can see instantly there's already 69 people for.
The votes are in.
The final rule law is Captain's Authority. In the story mode in Chapter 5, when you have the option to banish the stalwarts or seek reconciliation, you also have an option to enforce order, pass all the rule provisions in the council, and unify the city as its new captain containing the warring factions. So you can do this and then you can get Captain's Authority. Now, I'm not 100% sure how to get this in Utopia or if it's even possible, but definitely in the story, if you choose to enforce order, that's when you can get Captain's Authority. When you're in Chapter 5 and you're dealing with the Civil War, if you go into your council and you go onto the Rule tab, once you've passed all of the other rule laws, you'll be able to get this Captain's Authority vote. You need a 2/3 majority to pass it, but that shouldn't be a problem. So let's propose that and we will use our guided voting to get that vote through. It says, for the good of the city, the steward will be named captain and granted increased authority of the council. Everyone will address you as captain, trust will no longer be a problem, and voting will no longer be a problem. Essentially, you gain full authority over the city and you will be able to influence all votes, and it removes the trust system entirely. So vote for that, get that passed. And that's it. All hail the captain. And that is another path for you to end the war. After passing Captain's Authority in your central district, you'll notice that you have a new ability called Secure Rule, where you can send guards to root out militancy and silence dissidents against your rule as captain. It ends all conflicts, greatly decreases all faction fervor, many fighters will be detained. To do this, you will need 45 guard squads, and you will also need a prison of some sort. But we can click that and see what happens. There we go. That will allow all the fighting to stop. We've vanquished all the militants and all the fighting is now done. It takes 2 weeks to do this, so you just let some time pass and it'll eventually resolve itself, I believe. And there we go. There's a temporary stop to the fighting. And that's it, guys. That's all of the rule laws. They're extremely powerful, so I encourage you to use them unless you're doing the Captain's Difficulty No Rule Law achievement. You should definitely be using these rule laws. Next, to close out our guide, I'm just going to show you a few examples of what are the first laws to pass that I prefer in my playthrough, and I have got this set on Captain's Difficulty New London Chapter 1. So as I explained, the first thing you want to do is build yourself a council hall. Then we need to build ourselves a research section. So after you've built your council hall, they're going to make you do your vote of confidence. And we can immediately start leveraging this to help ourselves. So what I always like to do is negotiate. Whether you can pass a law or not, I always like to negotiate to see what promises I can do, because promises can help you with your city. So check all of the promises. The New Londoners, they want us to use a community action. Obviously, I'm not going to do that. They want chemical additives or mass-produced goods. Mass-produced goods is pretty good for me. I don't mind that. Faith Keepers, they have the least delegates. I don't think their 4 vote will help us, so I usually tend to ignore them unless they have something really good that I want. For example, family apprenticeships. But because I don't need more active workers right this minute, I don't need that right away. And then we've got the Frostlanders. So if we get them to do it, we can condemn the Faith Keepers. Obviously, we never want to do that. We can fund their projects. We don't want to use our heat stamps. And Forage Additive Citizen will produce food during calm weather. That is something I really want to pass anyway. It's a great early law to help with your food situation. So this is how we can enact laws and daisy chain the next law that will help us anyway. So we will accept that. That is our first law and that is our first promise. Let's get that vote through.
The delegates have spoken. The law takes.
Now we got to wait 10 weeks for the next law. I would suggest you guys try to get your research institute as soon as possible, because that's also going to greatly help with the promises. Once you've unlocked your ability to do research, you'll be able to do research promises. Now, when I first unlock research, it depends on the timing. If my council is about to come out of recess, I'm not going to do my first research because I want to use the law to drive what research I do. So now we have another law proposal available to us. Let's see what we can propose. We promised, you can see there's a little icon here. It will show you what law you promised. So we did promise to do this law, which is something we wanted to do anyway. So we'll propose it. There are 43 and 16 hesitant. That's right on the dot of 51. So we definitely need to negotiate. You can see you can't negotiate with some people, such as the Faith Keepers, because it's against their worldview. We can't negotiate with the Frostlanders, but we do want to negotiate with the New Londoners because they are mostly against. So we'll try to get them to vote for and see which thing is the best thing for us. For example, mechanized sawmill. That's a great research option that we wanted to do anyway because we need mechanized sawmill. So we can definitely do that. It's also worth noting balancing the promises. If you have a law promise pending, you obviously don't want to do another law promise. If you have a research promise pending, you obviously don't want to do another research promise. So here it's perfect. Let's get mechanized sawmills going. And as soon as we promise that, we get that vote through, we will do our mechanized sawmill research. Ideally, at the start of captain's mode, you would want it to RNG the building that gets you fuel, right? But you can't always get that. Like you want them to, sometimes they will suggest coal mines. So if they do that, that's perfect, but they didn't this time, that's fine. So we can get sawmill. So let's research that. Make sure you select the right one. Don't just go in here and hit the research button. Make sure you give the right one that you promised, which is mechanized sawmill. So hit research. All right, guys, now we have another law proposal. It is now week 23. So make sure you don't miss these law proposals because they're super important early game. We can just propose our own law, obviously. There are some laws that I want. For example, we want no common goods, reducing the goods demand or increasing goods production. That would be super handy. In the city laws, a couple of useful ones is basic necessities. You can get paid essentials, which will increase the heat stamp per capita, which is super useful early. These are a bit more useless. Here we also have community service, city development effort, which the main district provides a little bit of prefabs, which will definitely help. So you can see what they're supported by. The New Londoners want this one. So you can pick the laws that you kind of want to help you. Childhood is also useful. You can get this one, which is family apprenticeships, getting you more active workers. They're all the really good early ones to do. Now, instead of just proposing that law, what we can do is we can boost our trust with these guys at the same time. What we can do is not get them to grant an agenda, but we can make them a promise. So for example, we can go here and go make promise. Now, if the promise is bad, we don't have to do any of this. Here we go. We've got durable goods, right? The Frostlanders want us to pass durable goods. So we can go, since we wanted to do that anyway, why not do that? Fulfill a promise to these guys. It will just boost their trust and make everything just better, right? That's the optimal way to approach this. Now, because you have durable goods and a research going, you're not going to be able to make any promises with these guys. I think it'll say too many promises, but it's fine because we're fulfilling a promise with this. So we can propose this. There's too many promises. You don't want to wait for your research to be done because it's going to take too long. So you can just go and vote for this. By my maths, this should have like a 50% chance of going through. There we go, right on the dot. A little bit risque. So what you can also do is you can like grant their agenda and stuff and let them pick the next law. These New Londoners typically will pick something useful for you if you only have a few, but they also might repeal your existing laws. So early game, maybe not. But if you need to boost the relationship with them, then definitely you can use the grant agenda as well. All right, we finished that research promise that we gave to the New Londoners when we proposed our first law, and you can see now the trust has improved. Now, I could do another research right now, or I could wait 2 weeks to start my research. This is all going to be up to you. I'm going to wait 2 weeks to coerce one of these guys to give me the research that I want to do. You also, because this episode is focused on laws, instead of waiting 2 weeks, if you really wanted to min-max this, I would make a promise now to do a research for the New Londoners, and hopefully they give me something like the mines or something that I really need. What I really want done is in the heating section, these coal mines. So let's see if we can't get one of these guys through either a law or something to get us to do that research. All right, the council is now out of recess, so let's see what we can get them to do. We can now make a promise to the New Londoners. I think we've already made a promise to these guys. Oh, we can make another promise. Okay. Well, I think I want my relationship with the New Londoners. Let's see what promises these are. City development efforts. So we can, that is again another law that we might want to do. And we don't want to change our law for goods. So we can also do machine-centric shifts, but that requires research first. So immediately, this is the most beneficial thing. Unfortunately, you can't check all of them at the same time because if you decline to promise, it'll set the timer off. So I'm just going to go pick this city development effort. So I'm going to go over here and go to city and go city development effort. That'll give me some prefabs, which is always handy. Even though I can very easily pass this law, I'm going to negotiate anyway with the Frostlanders to see if they can't give me a research I want to do. Advanced untreated sawmill, not useful. Untreated sawmill, not useful. Weather adjusted shifts, not useful. So it's not always going to work in your favor, and I can't make any other promises with these guys. So unfortunately, in this case, I can't keep daisy chaining, but we will vote. This is all RNG, guys, so it'll be varying on your playthrough. Make your own decisions accordingly. And that's done. You can see my trust with all the people are going up now, and now I need to do a research. Now I can do my own research, or I can wait for a new law. In this case, because the law is going to take 10 weeks, I can't hold off on 10 weeks of research. So let's see if there's any promises I can make to these people that will help with my research, although that's a little bit out of scope for what I'm doing right now. But let's see. If we make these guys a promise, we can research bio-waste hothouse. Yeah, that's kind of useful. Okay, we'll just get this bio-waste hothouse going. Make sure you pick the right one. It's not this one, it's bio-waste hothouse. We'll probably do one more law and we'll call it that. I think you guys get the idea of what I'm trying to do. You can see I'm already stabilizing all the stuff I need to stabilize. But with bio-waste hothouses, that'll stabilize our food. We only have 43 weeks worth of food left. Also, it's worth mentioning that sometimes you will get these events come up, and these events will get you to pass particular laws. So make sure you do pass those laws when they come up. You'll have 30 weeks to do this. Family apprenticeship or mandatory school. Once again, this aligns with what we want to do anyway. So I guess the next law we're passing is family apprenticeship. So we'll go over here in childhood and we'll go family apprenticeship. It's also perfect for us because we do need those workers right now. We'll hit negotiate and see what we can do. We can't negotiate with the Frostlanders because we promised to research something for them. They don't want this. We need to negotiate with these new Londoners who are mostly against. Hopefully they give us something that we want. We have a choice between blast foundry, which is I guess not that useful right now, and ventilation tower, which is completely useless, or machine centric shifts. Workforce is decreased. Since I need this vote to go through, I'm gonna have to pick between 3 bad options. So like I said, you're not always gonna get the perfect option, so make your own decisions as you go. Ideally, we wanted the new Londoners to propose some sort of mine, but they didn't, so that's okay. I'm gonna choose to do this one because at least that's somewhat helpful. And that's it, guys. That's how you do it. You just keep doing it like that. Make sure you get laws as soon as you can, and make sure that you daisy chain the laws together with promises so that it aligns with the direction you want your city to go in. And that is the key takeaway on how you can use laws to effectively help the development of your city. One final thing to note is you can always use these techniques to get a law voted against as well. You don't have to have every law pass. There are very specific use cases where you might want to strike down a law. One example that I can think of is if you wanted to curry favor with a particular faction, you can grant agenda. What granting agenda will do is allow the faction to choose what the next law will be on the agenda. In return, you will gain some standing with that faction, so if you need to improve your relationships, you can grant the agenda. Now, granting the agenda immediately gives you that faction bonus, but in your law section, this law does not need to pass. Say you didn't want to do this mass-produced goods because you already have another law in there you wanted to keep, and there's plenty of people voting for. You can do the same negotiation techniques. You can go to the Frostlanders and negotiate, and you can, instead getting them to vote for, you can get them to vote against, right? So it's exactly the same, but you're just getting them to vote against. Obviously, that's not going to help us with very much. If we do that, you can see the new Londoners are probably still going to win this vote. But that is a technique that you can use, and there will be probably various situations in the game that you come up against where you want to shoot a vote down. The point is you can use the vote against as well as the vote for. With that, we'll end the video here. And if I haven't covered anything, I'm sure my astute viewers will cover it for you guys in the comment section, so do go check that out. And if you found this video helpful and would like to see more in future, you can support my channel by hitting that like and subscribe button. That's all for this video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching and have a good one.